Hey everyone, welcome to the Coach Catalyst podcast. This show is about helping you grow as a coach by standing on the shoulders of giants. Each show, you get a different mentor in your ear. The early motivations, the successes, the failures, the tools, the tricks, and the insight into where the industry is going. All of it so you can make your own dent in the world. Remember, success leaves clues. Now, without further ado, on to the show.
Welcome to the Coach Catalyst podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Whitwer. Today I had the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Marc Morris. Marc is a nutrition and strength coach living in Saskatoon, Canada. Marc's experience in fitness is varied. He's a competitive powerlifter, an international team head coach, and a national level physique competitor. After spending a decade in online nutrition and strength coaching, Marc has returned to formal adult education by mentoring other coaches through his Poly Health Nutrition Coaching Masterclass. Marc leverages his athletic experience and credentials in human nutrition to provide evidence-based but practical recommendations to coaches, clients, and the fitness community. In this podcast, we talk extensively about the education system, especially since Marc has a PhD, and how Marc might have done things differently if he wanted to focus on being a nutrition coach right away. We talk about his experience coaching the Canadian men's powerlifting team and having to coach athletes who compete in weight classes. There are definitely some nutritional nuances there. We dig into the systems he uses with his nutrition coaching business and how those systems have evolved over the years. And since Marc now spends a portion of his time mentoring other coaches, we chat about the best way for a new coach to get started, random stuff like should you do group or individual coaching, and a whole bunch of other gold. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Marc Morris, welcome to the Coach Catalyst podcast.
Trevor, thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat today.
I am. I'm really excited to hear your story and kind of how you got to where you are today. So we'll get to that, but let's go back to the beginning. So right now, I mean, you've got a very successful nutrition coaching business, but let's kind of go all the way back to why coaching, like to start. Was there a person, a mentor or something that kind of got you into it?
Yeah. I guess when I look back, I think I do have a story that like is pretty relatable in terms of similar to a lot of people's stories, like playing like high school athletics and thinking like, you know, do I want to kill myself to play college football or something or anything like that? And I just found lifting weights to support the sports I was playing, and then realized that like, you know, you can lift weights competitively. This is something I actually like more than the sport aspect, and kind of got hooked on the whole process of like, hey, what I eat influences my performance and the way my body looks and all that stuff. And I was just like instantly hooked. And I think at that point, I was still like a high school student, but kind of got caught on to, I think it was like T Nation at the time. And just started like digesting all of that stuff. Like I read like all of it. I was one of the people that like, I printed things out and had like binders of articles. And I think what it started as training, but really quickly moved to nutrition because of just the impact it had on the process. So started getting into that. And one person that stood out at the time was John Berardi. And this was even before any of the PN stuff. But just, I remember he had like a recovery drink called Surge that he had worked on, and like, like stuff like that. And I was just getting really into performance nutrition and body comp stuff, and applied for university and wasn't really sure what I wanted to do at the time. Applied for general science, and one of the universities I was accepted into just ultimately put me into like the chemistry program. They eliminated their general science program and put me in chemistry. And for whatever reason, it was the school I wanted to go to, and I just stuck with it. I had a good group of people around me, and I liked it in terms of the people I was around, but I knew I didn't want to be a chemist. And I spent way too much time in the weight room, reading on the internet, doing all that kind of stuff, and was completely hooked on that, and kind of just like was going through the motions around chemistry. But I remember seeing Berardi talk in 2006 at a conference. He was talking about similar things in terms of sports nutrition and that type of stuff at a conference at the University of Western Ontario. And I remember being like, how do I become you? And I remember thinking like, I didn't have the guts to ask the question at the time. I think 2022 Marc in terms of confidence was much different than young university Marc. I didn't have the confidence to ask like, how do I go down this path? Right. But luckily enough, someone else asked, and they're like, my son is really into this stuff. Like, how do they get into this? And I remember the answer being so unfulfilling. He was like, well, you got to read a lot and go to university and all this stuff. And I was like, this is not clear at all. Like, how do I do this? And I remember that moment being like, if I can just copy his credentials, I'd be pretty close. And I went down this path of being like, okay, PhD, CSCS. If I can go to grad school for something more specific that I'm interested in, that would be a good start, and get, the right certifications. And it kind of just opened this entire world of going down this path. And now I'm at the point where probably didn't need to do that, but it also didn't hurt. And it got me to a point where I'm now working with people on a one-on-one basis, helping them reach their goals, using nutrition and fitness and my knowledge to, help others in the same way that, it helped me. And in reality, probably saved my life. So it's just like the perfect spot to be in. But I remember it was a longer journey. And now I'm at the point where I'm helping others build their nutrition coaching businesses and stuff and that type of thing. So really benefiting from that experience and just trying to share it.
So if you went back and you were, what you know now, and you're talking to undergrad Marc, how would you have advised that person to get to maybe a similar place where someone wants to maybe own their own nutrition company and work with people kind of in a similar way that you do?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things being probably pretty typical, paralysis by analysis. I felt as if I needed to know everything before I got started, and spent so much time trying to perfect something that didn't really exist, when in reality I should have been like, hey, if you're someone that, is looking to get a little bit leaner, I can help you, and let's kind of figure this out along the way. I probably would have immersed myself in the process of helping people much sooner than I did, because it got to the point where I just spent so much time trying to digest and learn everything before applying it that I think I wasted a lot of time, like considerable years that I could have been really just taking action and learning about, what matters most and how to, perfect a coaching system.
So like more application early on is what
Completely.
you're saying.
Completely. Yep.
And I think that's something that the university system doesn't do a good job of. At least, I mean, I have an undergrad in exercise science, and so that you don't really get practical application maybe until your last year, and maybe you get a semester of it, and a lot of it's focused on the intellectual type learning, and you just don't get that.
And
so
even,
unless
I think a lot of times you probably have to go out of your way to get those experiences, right? It's one of those things where you got to be motivated to put yourself in those situations, versus like, you're not just going to have that if in the typical experience. And my undergrad experience for sure was very, very similar in terms of just like jumping through hoops for the sake of doing it, right? Like just doing assignments and memorizing things for exams just for the sake of, knowledge and competency, when in reality, like, I don't know, Trevor now does, like, when's the last time you thought about the Krebs cycle?
Right. I could probably count on 3 fingers the number of times clients have even asked me for like certifications or what kind of schooling have you done or anything like that.
It just doesn't flat out happen. No. It's not, I guess it's not that it's not important. It's just not, it's definitely not important to the people that we help and want to reach, for sure. So it's one of those things where I think we just probably need a little more balance in that approach. And that's why where I'm at now, educating others, it's like, we're only going to do stuff that you're going to use, right? Like that is a huge part of this.
Right. So I'm just curious, in Canada, do you have to like go into a certain type of school? Like, or can you not, is there a general kind of a liberal arts thing in Canada?
That's kind of, well, that was what I originally had applied for, was like a general program around science. So you would do like similar stuff that everyone would do in the first year, in terms of like, you're taking your physics and chemistry and some biology, that type of thing, kind of figuring out what the next move was for you. But at that point, the university I applied to just scrapped that entirely and was like, based on, what you applied for, chemistry is going to be the best bet. So you're here. And it ended up being like, the first year was probably similar to what I would have done anyway. But yeah.
I was originally pre-chiropractic.
Gotcha.
And so I took like the OChem 1 and organic chemistry 2, and those might have been the the lowest semesters of my life.
Oh, completely. Especially, man, it takes a special individual to enjoy those things, which were the people that I was surrounded with too. They're wonderful people, but they very much wanted to be synthetic chemists, and I was like, this is not for me. All I want to do is increase my bench press, and just knew quickly that it wasn't the right space, but was lucky enough to be like, I think a lot of people in terms of grad school stuff, especially if you have like lab science skills and things, it's like, hey, you can apply to kind of like a specialty field and do grad work in a certain thing. And I think a lot of people don't know those opportunities are available to them. And at that point, that kind of got me out of the lab and teaching closer to working with people and individuals and that type of thing, which is reality where I wanted to be, right? Was, get me out of the theoretical and start down a path of actually helping people.
And then, I mean, so what made you want to go into take that next step and do the PhD type program?
I knew it wasn't chemistry for sure, and that's where I didn't want to be. But I guess I was desperately trying to bridge this gap between. I think maybe the field has kind of expanded a little bit, but at the time, it's like you couldn't take biochemistry and kinesiology and try to put it together in how do I help people in like a nutrition coaching capacity, right? It was either you go into a professional field and maybe you go down the path of dietetics, but then you're learning about like tube feeds and then also how to, deliver a nutrition program in a community setting. It's like, that's not what I want either. Right. So I was desperately trying to bridge this gap between human movement, resistance training, as well as human performance and nutrition. And it just required a lot of self-study and stuff. But I knew at the time, I think grad school in nutrition was going to get me a step closer.
Mm-hmm. And would you do that again?
I don't think I would change anything about my path. But if I was, just because at the point where I'm right now in an education, I really do, in an education standpoint, really do pride myself on being an adult educator, and everything I learned about the educational process, I think, was really, really important to me. But as a nutrition coach, no, I would not do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people in that experience would probably be like, for me to do this and feel credible and feel like I need to do stuff, I need to go back to school. And in reality, I would in most cases, encourage people to take a different path.
Mm-hmm. And we'll get into that a little bit more. But so you did some work with Team Canada, with powerlifting team as well. Was that while you were in grad school, or was that afterwards?
It was both, actually. I got hired on to do powerlifting is an interesting sport in terms of you're working with athletes year round to gear up for competitions. In that capacity, I was doing all the game day coaching. So athletes would prepare, we'd go to a competition, fly to a competition, and then I would kind of take over the reins and do the game day coaching aspect. So I did a little bit of that, but also in terms of a niche and kind of getting close to how I wanted to operate as a nutrition coach, got really good at, how do we plan nutritional interventions and diets for 2-hour weight class sports? So like the weight cutting component, but also just, getting people closer to that part where, the nutrition stuff really influences, can you even make a weight class, right? How do you approach it and that type of thing? And then some short-term alterations and stuff in terms of how to make weight. So at that point I was doing, I was working with clients on a one-on-one capacity, but then also doing the game day coaching aspect too.
What's the most weight you've ever gotten someone to cut really quickly?
Okay, so that's a good question, because the reason why I spent considerable amount of time and effort working in this space and also writing in this space, and I published a book on 2-hour weight class athletes, is that there's so much information around that stuff, around like what you could do and what could happen. And people pull from that like MMA experience around, they have there's 24-hour weight class, sports, and maybe they're not competing for another 48 hours and completely different rules. In 2-hour weight class sports where you weigh in and then you're required to compete 2 hours afterwards. So drug tested powerlifting, weightlifting, some strongman that has weight classes, you really don't want to be cutting more than like 5% to 6% of your body weight. Anything more than that, you're just dehydrating yourself to the point where it severely starts to impact your performance. Everyone's a little bit individual. I've had people come down 7% and perform really, really well, where others, they tried something like 2 or 3% above their weight class and they feel like complete garbage. Right. So, I got into this space being like, okay, if I'm 1 to 3% above my weight class, what do I need to do to have a successful weight class and minimize the impact or a successful weight cut and minimize the impact on my weight performance versus, getting a bit more experience and really maximizing what you can do within a weight class. What do I need to do to come down from 5 to 6% kind of thing? So, I think in my own practice, I've probably, helped people shave 7-8%, but at that point you're just like really starting to impact things.
Right.
We had an athlete, Connor Lutz is someone I've worked with. He'd be a 74 kilo male powerlifting athlete, really, really fantastic bench presser. He was one of the ones that was like full on Rocky mentality. Nothing would get in his way. And we could bring him down from 173 pounds to 163 to compete in 74 kilos. And it didn't really impact his performance all that much based on how training went and stuff. Whereas other people, if you tried to do that 7% body weight cut, are just like, it's like, what happened to me? I got hit by a truck kind of thing. And that almost at the high level of like competitive stuff, might be what's required, for that type of thing. But for many people, like maybe more hobbyists work like lifting at the local level, it's like, why do you want to do this?
So how much do you see come back in those 2 hours? Do you try and bring some water weight back in those 2 hours, or is it kind of like, we need you to perform at this?
Okay. You definitely do. I think in like kind of industry speak, they call that like recomping, right? It's trying to replenish hydration as well as, some energy. You're not going to replenish all of your glycogen in 2 hours. That's something that takes, 8, 12, 14 hours, depending on how depleted you are, but replenish some stuff. I think a misconception is just because you jump on a scale and are a certain weight at some point doesn't mean you've gained all the weight back, right? But the goal would be to replenish hydration, feel a little bit better, and make up most of the weight so that you can perform again. That type of thing is always the goal. But there's only so much you can do in 2 hours, which is also why, maybe for most individuals, you don't want to cut any more than 3%. So that we don't have to dehydrate you. We can focus on less invasive or intense variables like fiber reduction, food volume reduction, so that like you still have just as much energy as well as you're not dehydrated and you just weigh less. You just like literally have less food in your gut.
Interesting. So how did you come about this gig? Was it just kind of, you knew someone, happenstance? Was it the university that you were at? Was there any special way that you got this opportunity?
I had been competing in powerlifting since like 2007. So kind of had been getting more involved in coaching, and the opportunity presented to do more game day coaching. I like to think that like just put myself in a position to kind of advance the ladder in terms of coaching to the international level. In reality, I probably just like hung out at competitions for long enough for them to be like, you should start doing this.
Anything that works, right? You just get that foot in the door, and sometimes it's a friendly, familiar face. So, so you went through, you did the graduate PhD stuff. Is that what kind of led into polyhealth then, or were there some other kind of stops along the way?
Yeah, I think for me, the grad school PhD thing was very much, I did want this to advance my career in private practice. And I knew that from the beginning, which was good and bad. It kind of had like the effect of, oh, I have to do this to finish, which, made it maybe aspects not enjoyable. But at the same time, I was like, I don't have to worry as much about publishing because I want to gain this experience to become credible outside of the field and do coaching and that kind of stuff. So always knew that was what I wanted to do. So I started, like applying what I was learning and building on my practice as I was finishing my PhD, which was really, really helpful for a lot of people. And I'm sure that's something that you guys experience all the time too. It's like, don't quit your job to do this. Do it on the side. Figure out if you like it. Gain a clientele, build up, credibility and focus on how you want to help people and who those specific people are and kind of go about it that way. So that's what I had been doing and going through there. And I think it actually some of my busiest periods of coaching was still in grad school. And I think at one point I had 100 plus clients while juggling, finishing like thesis writing and stuff, right. Which probably allowed me to become a lot more efficient in work and stuff too. But that was always the intent, was like, let's get back to working with people.
So were there any strategies that you used really early on that worked well for lead generation and getting clients?
Lead generation, for sure. It was as soon as I started realizing that, hey, people are much more interested in the results you can help them accomplish versus knowledge and education, which is like just the educator coaching mindset, right? Mm-hmm. I'm interested in this stuff. I want to know how it works, that type of thing. I should share that stuff. In reality, the people that are going to pay you to help them really are honed in on a specific result. So as soon as I realized, hey, people want to know that I'm this powerlifting coach that can take all the unfun stuff away from the weight cutting process and allow them to boost their performance and get stronger and become more competitive. As soon as I know, hey, I got to focus on that part, things became a lot easier because I kind of became known as that person that could help them do that kind of stuff. So it was that for lead gen. And then to handle 100 clients, I just had to become much more effective and efficient in the actual check-in process and communicating and not wasting time and make it streamlined and kind of get out of my own way was the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm. So early on, it was a lot of kind of the circles that you kind of were in the powerlifting circles, and those were a lot of your early clients?
Completely. And I think we're never going to get out of this space that it's a referral based capacity. People they trust someone that can help them do this. They want to tell their friends about it. People are going to hear about you that way. It's like a combination of that, as well as social media is just like, it's your business card right now. It's your storefront. Like just because someone refers someone on, they're going to search you out on Facebook or Instagram and make sure that you're doing these things, right? You're still active, that you're the person that can help them. So it's like, for lead gen, I think it's just a combination of focusing on results, nurturing relationships, and then putting yourself in a position where people know that you're doing this, you're active, there's an opportunity to work with you.
And so when did Polyhealth officially start? Do you know about what year?
2012, I think.
Okay. So you've been doing this for, almost 10 years.
10 years,
and how has your business evolved in that time frame? Has the client base changed? I mean, there's probably a lot of things that have improved in systems, but what would be big things that stick out?
At the beginning, and I think like a lot of coaches, I would work with anyone, right? Mm-hmm. Anyone that wanted a specific goal that I could help them with in terms of nutrition, even if they just wanted to like overall longevity and feel better, vitality, that kind of stuff, I'd work with them, take on anyone, that type of thing. My prices were super low. I had clients that were excellent. I had clients that were terrible. I was working with everyone, that type of thing. So over the years, getting much more niche and focused on who I helped and trying to stick to my guns and develop a system around how is the best way to help these people really help scale and grow my business. So that would be the biggest thing that changed. One thing that's funny is that in 2012, even if I live in Saskatoon and was working with tons of people in Saskatoon, even if I was working with people that I worked with in the same gym or worked out with, I still do everything online. Like it was the most effective and scalable way to do this. And, people would be like, do I need to meet with you? And I was like, no, let me show you this different way because you're going to end up liking it more because it's not going to take you, so much time, that type of thing. So even regardless, that's the way I did things. So that didn't change, but just my focus and approach really, really changed. And I think that's what's allowed me to scale and grow, because the more specific you can get with who you're working with, the more someone can come to your stuff and know immediately if it's for them or not, right? So it allows you to build trust and that authority so much quicker. So that would be one of the biggest things.
So Marc, you mentioned systems as being kind of one of the core kind of pieces. When you first, let's talk about how you first started with your systems and then how those have evolved. And when I say systems, let's talk specifically about coaching, your system and how you coach clients. Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing being, like a lot of people when I started out, I think we get this idea that it's really important for us to work with the individual and cater the process to them. And I think what that looks like in a lot of times is like, you'll tell a client how you do things and express that to them. And they're like, do I really need to do that? And if you're focusing on being like too client centered, you're like, no, maybe we can try it this way. And then things get wishy-washy and you're all over the place in terms of maybe you're communicating on different platforms or doing things different ways or approaching things different ways. And I just realized through time, it's like, I got to, regardless of the goal, I got to focus on the exact same thing, collect the same information, present it in the same way, have really, really clear expectations around, how do clients check in? What does it look like? What happens if they miss it? Like, what does that look like? Expectations around that and boundaries and all that stuff. Because if I'm going to take this from a nutrition coaching hobby and working with a handful of people and make it my career, I got to be much more effective and streamlined. So that's kind of one of the biggest things. And where it started was like, Google Sheets driven and taking like information and collecting it and presenting it and that kind of stuff. And just really, really becoming efficient in communicating. Here's where you find everything. Here's what it looks like. The onus is on you to really push through the check-in process. And this is when you would do it. And this is what it would look like, and kind of going from there. So just developing like kind of a rock solid check-in process, as well as kind of like an onboarding startup process.
As a gym owner, Coach Catalyst is the key to having low turnover. For several years, I struggled and spent 10 to 20 hours a week communicating with clients via phone calls, Facebook Messenger, email, and text messages. I had tried everything to make my life more efficient. I was at my wit's end. And then I found Coach Catalyst. Since starting the software, I have found a life again, and my clients are thanking me for being so involved in their fitness life. I've cut my daily commitment to interacting with over 300 clients to under 15 minutes a day and have streamlined my 6-week challenges. I couldn't recommend it more. I just don't know if I would even be here today if it wasn't for Coach Catalyst. If you don't have an account already, you're missing out and not helping the people you could be.
Okay. So tell us a little bit more about the onboarding startup process, because I think that's a piece a lot of coaches miss. And so what did you do specifically from an onboarding process that maybe helps set up a more successful relationship with that client?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing being, I think a lot of coaches get into this space because they're passionate and they want to help others, but they also, because they're so passionate about this stuff, feel uneasy selling things, which is the next step in terms of, for you to help someone, the best capacity is in a paid coaching relationship. There's no getting around it. Everyone has skin in the game. It's effective, that type of stuff. So from an onboarding perspective, I didn't like selling things at the beginning or talking about price or any of that stuff in a way to display value. Regardless if someone asked me, can I work with you? What would that look like? Or should I be taking protein powder? I would essentially walk them through an assessment process where it's like, I don't really know if you should be taking protein powder, but let me collect a little bit more information and get a better idea of like what you're trying to accomplish and what your goals are. And I can tell you, not only answer that question, but also what might be holding you back from your goals. And if coaching seems like the right fit after that point, we can talk about that. So I kind of developed a system around, in terms of onboarding, it's like, let's collect some information completely free of charge. I'll show you what's holding you back from your goals. And at that point, in reality, no one's done this for you on an individual basis and shown you, you're going to be begging for the next step in terms of the coaching based stuff. So that's kind of the process that I'd worked through, regardless if someone was like pretty interested, they knew that I was the person to take them on the next step, or if they were just curious, it's like, hey, let me show you this part. And at that point, you're getting them to do some tracking. So you have some objective information. You're making them go through some steps and kind of pre-qualifying them that they'll do some work in this capacity, because they're going to need to anyway. So you're kind of assessing if they're a good fit right off the bat, kind of thing. So that is kind of where the onboarding process worked, is that like, hey, you're seeing some of the inner workings of how this will go out anyway, to familiarize yourself with it, get a better sense of, is it for you? And really me showing you the value of coaching, which is getting a better sense of how things are going on an individual level and what they're looking like, as well as here's the next step, because I've already kind of taken a look at it.
And is that evolved, or is that process of kind of almost like try it before you buy it type of model? Core tenets of it have definitely stayed the same. I think the biggest thing that's probably changed is I used to, as my services got more expensive and more professional and more streamlined, I would just take that same information collection
process, keep that in there, but then go to more of a strategy call system where I'm talking someone through it, which just people want to, like, when's the last time you bought something for close to like $1,000+ without talking to someone? Like, it doesn't happen. So you just need to talk. You just need to talk to someone. So I think the only thing that would change is that, like, injecting some, the personal type approach to the process would be the biggest thing that's changed.
And probably shortening the process. So rather than maybe taking a week to make it happen, you kind of make it happen right in that call, and you can kind of move people through the sales pipeline faster. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, accurate. Or even, maybe it's something that I get them to collect 5 days worth of data. Maybe I only need 2 or 3 to shorten that up, because when someone's excited and interested in doing the work, the quicker we can get them to a process where they now see the value and are ready for the next step, it's more effective, right? And that's probably just business 101, which, again, a lot of times people don't teach you in nutrition coaching school, which, for a long time didn't exist.
Right. So for you, so you have this process where, you kind of bring them in, or actually, let me go back and talk about something else. Your pricing model, right? So a lot of coaches, I think this is a very sensitive topic for coaches. I don't know what to charge. And usually it's just like a Google search on the internet. What are other people charging? And then I'll probably charge around that. You kind of said you kind of incrementally kind of increased your prices probably as you developed more confidence in your skills and how you could help people and got more niche. Is that how you kind of help coaches now kind of think about pricing, or do you have any other thoughts around that?
I think that's bang on. I think at any moment, I think we've all been approached by business coaches that are going to sell you on this high ticket thing and the way to approach it. And if you're just starting out, trying to sell someone on $1,000 a month coaching thing with your confidence level is just not going to happen. Like it isn't. I don't know anyone, maybe like a personal trainer type that has tons of sales and consult experience can make that leap, but anyone else just isn't going to be able to happen. Like, that's just not going to happen. So the way I teach people is that, hey, yes, we got to see what the market value is and what, most people are willing to pay for this sort of thing, and probably go more medium ticket and start at somewhere that you're more confident in at. Get some reps in there and then incrementally bump things, but probably quicker than most people are comfortable with, in terms of, let's make those incremental bumps based on, when you get 5 to 10 people through the process, and then kind of go from there, not wait years. Because if you wait a year now, even just the way inflation is and stuff, right? You're losing money if you're not moving in that direction very, very quickly. So I think, depending on what your offer looks like and what you deliver on, getting a better sense of, okay, how much time is this taking me and what's realistic on a per hour basis, which isn't the way you should sell your coaching, but it gives you kind of a benchmark around what you should be making, as well as what does the market dictate this service is worth, as well as what makes me unique. Where is my expertise? How can I get more focused and more niche down so that I can, stand out from others and charge more money, and then develop a process where I show people value, get them excited, take them from curious, which is usually the marketing phase, to paying, which is developing your sales skills, and then kind of going from there, and then incrementally bumping things once I've developed more confidence. Because that high ticket stuff's it's not out of the question by any means. It's just getting to that place before you have those reps is going to be really, really tough.
Right. Yeah. I mean, confidence in the selling process is the most important thing, because if you're not confident in selling something, the prospect, they feel it, and it just makes it a lot more challenging. So how did you ultimately decide kind of the niche or the route that you were going to go? So maybe generalist right away, kind of working with anybody that had a credit card. Yeah. Did you kind of find the client that you resonated with most, or the person that you could help? You felt like you had a good process to help them, or how did you figure out who was ultimately the person?
Yeah, well, obviously, in a lot of situations too, especially when people get right specific, I kind of found the right combination of what I'm passionate about, what I have tons of experience in, and how I'm best willing to help. And before you know it, it was me taking on a client where I was doing their powerlifting training, looking over things, doing the nutrition aspect as well, and covering the entire process from I don't know you at all, to taking you right to the competition floor and walking you through things. So I became an expert in that area. But for someone new, it's like, okay, what lights you up? What are you excited about? How are you best, willing to serve people? Also validating, do people want that thing? Right? Would be the next thing. Are they willing to pay that stuff? Because we all have stuff that we're interested in that type of thing. But you got to validate, like, are there people that are willing to pay for this stuff? Because that's not always the case, right? And then trying to get more specific, but not being too specific, right? And validating, does it work? It's like, well, I have this idea that I want to work with, like, ultimate Frisbee referees on their gut health. And it's like, there's not a market for that. I can tell you pretty quickly, right? Like, it's not a thing. So then validating it like that way and kind of going like down that path. But I think that's where mentorship is probably the strongest, is that a lot of times that thing that someone needs to focus on is right in front of them, and they just aren't seeing it, right? Be it they feel like someone else is already doing it, so they can't do it, or they don't see themselves as that type of coach, when it's reality. It's like, no, that's what you need to do.
Yeah, I don't think I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's why we hire coaches, right? To have basically another set of eyes on what we're doing, and they can see typically the things that are right in front of us that we're looking past, or we're trying to make things too complex, and they can help simplify the process. Were there any coaches early on that you really connected with that helped you on your practice, or were you more kind of the read books and apply type of stuff?
I think it originally was read books and apply. And then I think I realized quickly, it's like, other people are doing this. I would like to learn from them. One of the best ways to do that, is hire them in a coaching capacity and see the way they're doing that. I think one of my first people I was coached by, Neil Katchuk, Trench Fitness out of Regina, he took me through some bodybuilding stuff, and I competed in that. And I remember just learning so much through that experience. So that was a big one. And I remember one of the things that stood out was, I think in 2013, I started to get really into like HRV stuff, heart rate variability. And I was like measuring it in the morning and letting it dictate, like getting a better sense of how recovered I was and how I felt and that type of thing. And I remember measuring it and I'm being like, okay, well, I'm going to start reporting this to you. And maybe you can use it. And he's like, no, I don't want that. I was like, what do you mean you don't want that? Like, what do you like, this is a piece of data. Maybe you can, you can use it to, guide what we're doing. And he's like, no, I'm not going to use it to change what I'm doing. So I think it's going to add friction to the process around you having to measure something else and take something else and report something else, and do it. And I remember at the time being like, kind of feeling like, oh, that's kind of weird, right? Like, why don't we collect more stuff? And it's like, well, I'm not going to use it. So I feel like it's a burden for you to collect it. And that is one of those things that's like, in terms of simplicity and moving forward, it's something that's really guided my coaching practice, because we're not going to measure it if we're not going to use it, because people are busy. They have so much stuff going on. If it's just noise, like, in terms of the signal, like, why would we measure it? And I remember that was one thing that really, really stood out to me from an early mentor.
So with your power athletes that you're working with, was it more kind of like a macro based approach? Was it more kind of a habit based approach? Was it a combination of both? What was the strategy in working with that clientele?
Well, with that clientele, I mean, weight class athletes, we do need to be close to the numbers. So we were like prescribing macros for sure, because they're going to influence so much of the body comp process. The way I view things though, is that like, if you just focus on that, you have a structure that someone can follow, but it really tells them nothing about how to follow it. Right. So, the way I view it is that like, we need to get a better sense of, as nutrition coaches, how much energy is someone burning typically, and what they need to do to maintain that energy in terms of consumption, right? And set that structure around, okay, here's the checks and balances with energy balance, but also how does that energy made up in macronutrients? Can't get away from that. We need that objective stuff. But the art of coaching is now, okay, identifying what do people need to do to fill that structure and adhere and stick to it in between that. So it's like, you got to have both. There's like, and especially in a results-based business like nutrition coaching, you got to have both. You got to be able to say, like, this is the structure that you need to do stuff that we're going to adjust based on what we're seeing. But at the same time, my ability to coach you is going to come down to, what do you need to do to stick to something? And what are the habits you need to build to fill that structure and kind of go from there? And you need both those things.
And do you think that maybe the dosage of those depends on the skill and level of that client?
Yes. Yeah. Like definitely like in some capacity. And I think I'd always like to, like, my personal philosophy around this is that, like, number one, when we get this stuff started, it's not going to be perfect, and that's okay. Like, you're going to get better at it. I think a lot of times it might be a little bit daunting. I'd rather throw someone into the deep end and coach them through with the intent that it's not going to be perfect, and you're going to get better and improve before we peel back some elements of our approach, versus I'm making the assumption that you're not going to be able to do this based on your background and what you're saying, and then work up. So I'm definitely more top down in that approach, where it's like, let's do this way, approach it. Chances are you're going to see some success and get better. And it's going to be, a process where we have more control at the beginning, and then we take away control once you get a better idea of how things need to look, and kind of go from there, which, again, going back to, this is a results-based business, I think is the best approach. Like, I think having more control and being a bit more objective about some things you need to do. So I guess yes and no.
So are you setting macros right away, kind of in that first interaction or that first week with that client? Are there any apps that you...
But based on...
Go ahead. You finish and then we'll talk about some details.
But based on a combination of what the textbook says they should be doing based on their goals, as well as what they're currently doing, not just what we feel should be optimal, because that's going to set someone up for, like, failure.
So what are some of your favorite maybe apps for tracking that you feel like work really well with clients? Are there any ones that you really like?
Like my Fitness Pal has been around forever and is like pretty ubiquitous. So there's quite a few clients that still use that stuff in terms of nutrition information. So that'd be probably the most common one. But I like, if someone's hooked on using something like Macro Factor, like, chronometer or anything like that, or those lines, definitely use that kind of stuff as well.
How long do you feel like people can stick to that? Do you find that someone can track macros for a period of time and then they just kind of, it almost gets like old and then they start falling off? Or are you able to keep people doing that for long enough?
I feel like with just like anything, with the right approach, I mean, the goal of using tracking in an app is to reach a specific goal. So we always want to keep that in mind and break it up so that, like, it's a tangible thing to achieve. But when we focus on the reason why we're using this app is, or, this approach or this tool is to do a specific thing. And that's why you should be doing it, with the intent of, you don't need to do it forever. And there's going to be periods where you probably shouldn't do it. And I'm going to coach you through that and what that would look like, as well as what happens once you get closer to that goal and we start phasing out some elements of control. Then I think people can do it. But I still have clients that love the accountability and guidance, and they don't track 365 days a year, but they do still some element of it and have done it for years. And I think that's okay too. I don't know. I don't get any sense that it's the way they approach it is disordered. So that part is good and comforting. But I think with the right approach and the real, like, I'm not training you to become the best at tracking. We're using tracking to reach a specific goal, and it's going to teach you more about the food you eat and what it would look like, so that you can build some habits around that once you've reached that goal, right? Just like homework. You don't want to be the best at doing your homework. You're doing your homework to to reach a specific learning outcome and achieve that, right?
So kind of switching base, going back to the business aspect, at what point did Polyhealth turn from, I guess you had, 100 clients in grad school, so that's pretty much a full-time business. But when did it really feel like, hey, this is my thing, this is my business, this is the thing that's paying the rent and buying the food and all that? Like, how quickly did you get to that point?
Well, I think at that 100 client point, I was like, this is the thing that is my future. This is the thing that I can turn into, like, it became a reality around like, this is something that I can do long-term, and I'm not going to need to go down the academic route. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it became a reality, that type of thing. So I think it was that at that point, but as well as like, I think with a lot of coaches as well, like you realize quickly that there is a finite limit of people that you can work with, and there's different ways to create more impact. So when I started taking on coaches and training them and allowing them to work with people and them building up their one-on-one businesses and reaching more people, where it's like, hey man, this is it. This is the way for me to get more impact and teach more people and reach more people and help more people and help people that, like, let's be honest, they weren't going to come to me, but they're going to come to this individual. Right. So that was kind of when it was like around 2015, 2016, when I started taking on coaches, where I felt like this is a business.
Mm-hmm. And how many coaches do you have working with you right now?
Currently we are working with, like, I have 3 on my Polyhealth team. And that is like went up and down over the years. With the Dr. Marc method though, like my nutrition certification program, we've taken 240 students through the program in the last 2 years. So, that's just been a different way of me approaching it. Right. So there's 3 people that we work with on the one-on-one nutrition coaching arm, but also like I'm helping others develop their own businesses.
Mm-hmm. So when did you decide to create the certification?
That was a thing that we talk about, mentorship and things that are right in front of you. I probably delayed and didn't think was the right move for the longest time. But in 2018, someone was like, like you're taught 2 full university courses. You're kind of this university professor gone rogue that has this like practical experience / business experience, and people would pay you a lot of money to do that, and being like, nah, I work with people, this is what I do. But then being like, nah, you know what, you're right, this is a thing in terms of like curriculum development, developing a program, looking at it this way. Why not me? Like, why wouldn't I do that? I am the person. So it took a little bit of convincing, but yeah, in 2019 was the first time I offered that program, and I've been doing it ever since, and it's turned out to be one of my main focuses.
So how do you balance then this kind of like, all right, I'm still working with clients, I'm also helping coaches, I just had a new child, and I'm balancing this family life. Like, do you have any strategy around finding time to do it all?
Yeah. Well, I definitely, like, there's no more 100 client roster. Like that just wouldn't happen. At that point I was doing, 15 check-ins a day, pretty much like 6 to 7 days a week, like full-time. And that's, flexibly unflexible right. A lot of times. Like you do it on your own time and you can make it work, that kind of thing. And there's, different strategies to take time off and that kind of stuff. But now I'm working with a lot less clients, like 15 to 20. I think I'll always work with nutrition clients and nutrition coaches, just because I like to stay close to the process. Like I feel like walking the walk and trying out different things and relating to them that way makes a lot of sense. Even if, like, in terms of business sense, I should be focusing on the education component. I'm like, I like coaching people. I'm still going to keep that part on. But also just like, creating systems to measure, what's most important here. Like, what do I need to do to keep everything growing and building, and focus on that stuff and go that way. So that, I can free up more time to, still have a social life and a family and that kind of thing. I almost laughed a little bit as I said social life. I should take that back. Have a family life.
As you have small children, we all, you have one set of friends you get together once a month with.
Pandemic and stuff. Like I'm right. like the friends I have, I pay them. Let's be honest. Right. Yeah. But like that kind of thing, and finding balance.
So with the cert, do you kind of do, is it more of like a rolling start where you bring a cohort of people in, or is it kind of start whenever you want? How do you operate that?
Yeah, it's still a rolling start and cohort driven. We've considered going the evergreen route, but I really like a group of people working through things together. I think it's just best from an accountability and guidance standpoint. They see everything, that they're working through at the same time and feed off each other in that energy and shared space. So we still do things cohort driven. We have one going on right now. The next one would start middle of September.
Okay. So do you open it up kind of twice a year type thing?
Usually 3 times a year. We'll do like a fall, winter, and then springtime one.
Okay. And how long does the cert last?
Yeah, it's a 12-week program, and really, I like it. Like the way it's designed is like a combination of we're gonna teach you the science of nutrition, and it would kind of be like the college level version of macronutrients and metabolism. Again, we talked about the Krebs cycle. It's like, no, we're not doing that again. But we need to know like exactly meat and potatoes of what you need to know to influence someone's body composition, athletic performance, and overall health. But then start to bridge the gap with, well, how do we develop a coaching system within this? From start to finish, first DM till when you graduate a client, the check-in process, the assessment process, all of that stuff. And then I think what people really benefit from is that they work through the process with an actual test client, live client in the last module. So again, we talked about jumping through hoops and stuff. It's like, let's build some stuff out that you're actually going to use and then coach someone under my supervision. So you have the confidence that you're going to be able to do this on your own.
Mm-hmm. So you cover everything from the science of nutrition through the business of coaching and how do you turn this into a business?
How do you make how do you optimize the check-in process, but also like, what do you pull from how you're interacting with people and turn it into social media content so you can get more people curious about it.
Mm-hmm. So would you say a lot of your lead generation now comes from social media presence, or do you have any other kind of pipelines that you find are good lead sources?
I think it's a lot of social media stuff. I still like the referral thing. Again, we can't get away from it. People are going to like when you develop something that's fantastic and you're a good coach, people are going to want to tell other people. So there's always going to be that referral aspect as well. My most recent interest is I've been putting a lot of time and energy into my YouTube content, which is brand new to me in terms of my business coach is big into YouTube. And I've been definitely going down the path of like, it's one of the toughest things to do from a marketing perspective because it's got to be like scripted. You got to get it like you're trying to get people interested in terms of like thumbnails and like titles and what you talk about and hooks and like all that stuff. So it's been interesting from a business perspective in terms of how to roll it out. But that'd be one of the social media things I've been focusing on quite a bit.
Okay. Do you have any strategies that you guys teach around referrals? I mean, do you have any processes to help, get someone to refer?
Yeah, totally. I think number one, there's a few things, and I actually just made a video on this. So it's like very, very fresh in my mind. Perfect. First of all, there's no shame in asking for a referral. If you need clients, if you want clients, the people that are working with you, typically they want to support you and give that type of stuff. There's no shame in asking for a referral when it's like, when you need it or you want to grow or you want to fill things up. And I think one of the best ways to do that is like, you always need a reason, right? And it's not just like, I want to work with more people. It's like, I have some availability. You're a great client because of these reasons, right? You're punctual, you work really hard. I'm assuming that based on who you are and our fantastic working experience, someone that is also like you and that would benefit from this experience. Can you put me in contact with them and kind of go down that path? Mm-hmm. So that's, asking when you need to ask, but also, learning to ask when things are really, really good and you don't necessarily need clients and someone's had like a fantastic experience, not just at the end of working with you, right? Would be the biggest thing. I think a lot of times people are like, oh, now's the time to ask for a referral when I'm graduating this person. It's like, no, you can do social media content. You can do referrals. You can do all that stuff much, much sooner in the process. And you really, really should, right? It shouldn't just be at the end when, you feel like that's when you ask. It's like, no, much, much sooner, especially when things are going well and stuff like that's the exact time to ask for that kind of stuff. And I think, just putting in the mind of like, a lot of the times the people we'll work with are going to be weight loss clients. So it's like, let's be honest. you've had success here and you lost 10 pounds in 10 weeks. And that is a process that's really, really difficult for a lot of people. And if there's someone you feel in your life that's expressed wanting to do something like this, it would be great if you could put me in contact with them, because I know you're a good fit in kind of going in that path. So those are kind of two strategies. It's like, there's always got to be a reason. Ask when things are appropriate and going well, not just at the end of the process, would be really, really smart. And I think one of the best ways to ask for a referral is not to ask, and just get into the habit of displaying results that people that are going to be referrals anyway are going to see, right? And some strategies around that is like Facebook still, you tag someone in, a social proof, result-based post, and all their friends and family see it. I saw it happen with a student this week posting a picture. Wasn't even a before and after. It was just literally someone smiling, being down 50 pounds. Their friends and family saw it. And there was like 73 comments on it being like, you look amazing. Thanks. So like, this is so great. How did you do this? It's like, this stuff still works. Like people like still want to see that stuff and want to see what the next step is. Right. So just making sure you're putting yourself in a position to do that kind of stuff. A little bit harder to do on Instagram because you tag someone in it and it kind of lives in that weird third frame thing where you're tagged in stuff. Like no one looks there. Like no one goes to your Instagram profile and goes to like, what have you been tagged in? Right. But that collaborate function is really, really good in terms of, if someone's really proud of something and you can, collaborate with them on it, a client that can live on their page. And a lot of times they're not going to do that stuff for themselves. So, just creating something, running it by them and being like, I really want to post this because I think it's going to inspire others down this path. How would you feel about me, posting that, them seeing it, okaying it, you doing it, it living on their page as well will have a similar effect.
Nice.
Yeah.
For most of your coaching, it's been one-on-one, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever kind of dipped the toes in kind of the group type function, or is that just not necessarily the route that you want to go?
I feel like it's a fantastic route. And when done properly, it's the most scalable and like business route that you can take around that stuff. There's pros and cons of all of this stuff. You might not get as best results if you don't have that individualization approach, but I feel like more experienced coaches that know exactly who they're talking to and still can scale up, a one-on-one component and maybe like a group call or something like that can see a lot of success. And in reality, that's what I'm doing with my nutrition certification program. So I am doing components of that, but on a one-on-one, like for a client basis, I think it's best served for someone that's quite experienced and knows what they're looking at and looking for and have quite a bit of experience in a niche area.
Right. I know how we've always kind of looked at it with coaches is when you're just starting out, that one-on-one model is great because you get to learn a lot and you can kind of take your time. But as you start to niche down into a specific person or goal, there starts to become a lot of similarities between, like, you see these clients and you're seeing a lot of the same struggles and you kind of know they're going to have a roadblock in week 2 or whatever. There just starts to pop out trends, all these similarities. Right. And so the group model then, like, because you can kind of almost map out that journey and then take people through it, but still add individualization along the way. And so is that a similar approach that you guys teach, is like start individual, and then if you eventually want to go to group, like do it?
Yeah. I would always encourage you to do individual at first because you're going to learn so much through that process. But once you're at the point where you've noticed so many trends and what people need, and the biggest thing being like to scale it up, you do probably want to get majority of people that are in your program or doing the group program on a group call where they're together and asking similar things. So it's not like that's a program and not a course, right? Like a course wouldn't have that component, but to deliver that program, be it there. But you want people to be having a shared experience, right? Like if they have a bunch of different things that they're asking about or whatever is all over the place, like they're not going to see the same level of value, right?
So what are you seeing now with the industry? So you're kind of on both sides, right? You're coaching, like you're actually working with people, but then you're also helping coaches kind of get into the industry, get started. Where are you seeing the industry going in the next 5 years? Do you see any kind of trends or any spots where coaches should really be thinking about?
Yeah, I think again, I think what's interesting, Coaches Catalyst, like you guys, Coach Catalyst, you guys are using technology to leverage coaching relationships, which I think is super smart. I think we're going to continue to see technological advances in terms of this stuff. What I think originally maybe worried me a little bit about it was like, I personally need to create something like that because that's where the industry is going. But I'm always comforted with the fact where it's like humans working with humans, I think is always going to be there. I think, we can collect so much data, and I'm pro data, pro trend, pro like, let's figure out what you're seeing to make decisions. And maybe there's some like, artificial intelligence doing that or something, something doing that stuff. I don't think that's going to be replaced. I really, really don't. I think, individuals are always going to be doing the coaching, and that human to human connection is really, really important from just an experience, but also like warmth perspective. But I think it's finding ways to leverage technology so that you can create a business out of this, reduce friction, make a more scalable product and that type of thing. So I think where I'm seeing the industry going is that like, there's going to be more tech. We're going to be able to utilize more tech. That's going to be important, but I don't think it's going to replace experienced coaches making the right decisions for individuals and having that human connection around stuff. How do you feel about that?
I think you're spot on, right? So like I'm in the technology world, but we also have gyms and facilities, and we always get this question all the time with gyms is like, well, what do you think, gym's ever going to go away? And I'm like, absolutely not. Because yes, the gym is a place you go to work out, but it's the human connection that you get when you're at the gym that makes a gym special. Like it's the smiles that you see, it's the high fives, it's like that stuff that technology is never going to replace. But then on the other side, like I have a technology company. And so how we look at technology is how do we make a coach more powerful? And we're getting more and more data, right? Everyone's got Oura Rings or they've got Fitbits or they've got Apple Watches, and we're collecting all this data, and that data can be valuable, but having to sift through all of that data as a human is just not worth someone's time. Like you can train machines to pull that out and get the important stuff and put it in front of the human to then do the human work of like helping that person actually make changes and helping hold them accountable. Because I don't know about you, like I've used habit tracker apps and other things where there isn't a human behind it, and like I'll maybe use it for a little while unless I'm really motivated about something. Like if I just stop using it, I don't really care, and I just move on to the next thing. And what we found with the software is, and we actually tested it in our own facilities, is we've put groups of people on the exact same programs, exact same information, exact same check-ins. One group had no coach behind it, and the other group had a coach that if someone missed a check-in or two, they reached out. We saw a 90+% completion versus like a 12% completion. And so it's just like that human element is the X factor, I think, in the change process. Technology can just augment a human to allow them to do more, right? Kind of very similar to what you said with scale. It's kind of embracing that.
First of all, I love that. And the fact that you guys have data behind it to support that is just so strong and very, very validating to me, because it's like something that I've also noticed. And the fact that others are noticing it too is just like really, 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 really helpful. And just kind of validates, like where things are going and what people need to be focusing on. And I think a lot of times too, what I think a lot of coaches do is that they realize, hey, I want to create a business out of this. I got to leverage technology. Maybe I'll do something that is super low ticket and I can get a bunch of people in and leverage technology that way. And it's like, that is not the right move for you. It never is, right? Like you're not, first of all, do you know, like, do you crunch the numbers? Like, do you know what you're going to need to get a livable wage and how many people you need right now? Like, you are not a huge fitness influencer. Like, the way to do this is create something based on human connection that's medium ticket, get better at it and go down this path. And then if you want to do something that's super scalable, you'll have so much of a better idea of how to, what people need and what people want and how to roll it out, that you're going to be in a position to do it. And I think it stems from a lot of times being like, I don't feel like I can offer this medium ticket coaching based on my experience. And you definitely can.
As a coach that runs challenges, I needed my life back. I had stuff all over the place. a Facebook group for community interaction, Google Sheets for check-ins and measurements, and was drowning in email communication. As my challenges grew past just a handful of people, I started to notice clients were falling through the cracks. I began researching virtual assistants because I just couldn't manage it all. And truthfully, the client experience was going down the drain. Luckily, a friend recommended Coach Catalyst and just told me to trust her. I'm sure glad I did. Now I can run my challenges with 2 or 200 clients with just a few clicks. The lessons get delivered on the right days, the accountability happens automatically, and most importantly, the communication is all in one spot. I even created 2 new challenges from the Coach Catalyst library. Best part, didn't have to change a thing. I used to spend 15 minutes just trying to log into all the apps I needed. Now I log in and my dashboard tells me who needs a shout out and who needs a kick in the butt in about 15 seconds. I feel like a huge weight is lifted off of my shoulders. I can finally spend my time coaching again instead of worrying about all the admin work. Do your brain a favor and get Coach Catalyst.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. What would you say are some maybe books or different tools that someone could start if they're a new coach, they're getting started? Are there any books that you recommend or want coaches to get when they're getting started?
What's funny is one of the most impactful books I've read in the last 10 years is Be So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport, which is kind of like the anti-passion hypothesis, which is a little bit interesting because I'm like very much follow your passion, that type of thing. But it talks about like how we derive happiness in our work-based relationships. And that one was just like complete game changer around like how I viewed certain things and what I need to do to that. Because it might seem a little out of place for someone that should chase their passion and do this type of stuff, but I think it just gives you a different way of looking at a lot of these things and probably makes it more business focused, which is important if you really want to make a go out of this. So that'd be the one book that's super, super important. And then from a learning experience, and I think what a lot of coaches could benefit from, especially as coaches, we leverage science and do science-based things and that type of stuff. Stanford had an online course that was free called Writing in the Sciences that I took in 2014. That was literally the most useful thing I ever did.
Interesting. What was the premise behind it? Was it a writing course or was it?
Yeah, it was like effective writing it was for scientists, but like even just science-based people and that type of stuff. And man, it was like maybe like had flashbacks. Like no one taught you this in like grade 10 English. Like where was this stuff? Like I'm practicing things. I'm getting better. I'm seeing the results of it right away and becoming a more effective writer and communicator. And that was just something that like, I always like look back and be like, man, that was a game changer for me, in terms of not just writing for science, but like writing captions, writing emails, writing like all that stuff. And I just remember being like, most useful thing I ever did. And I know it still exists, but I think it's a bit more, they only let a certain amount of people in it now, but it is still completely free, or at least like $50 or something. And it was amazing. Hands down, best thing I've ever done.
So we might just piggyback off of what you just said, but what skill do you feel like a coach doesn't know they need until they're deep into the industry?
I think we get into this stuff because we're like super passionate about it. And we want to help others in the same way that we've been helped. But I went through a stretch where I didn't work out for like 5 days and I felt like completely sick to my stomach. I felt like a waste of space and I felt like a piece of me was completely missing. And I know for a fact that people that I work with don't feel that way. They like, you know what I mean? Like most of them don't, right?
Yeah.
So I think having some empathy around that you're not your market and where these people are coming from is really, really important. So if there's something that anyone can do, it's like, hey, work in the service industry where you need to like please people, but give them something that they need. So like, I don't know, be a bartender for 2 years and develop some social skills and like maybe like a shred of empathy, because I think that would be a very worthwhile endeavor.
Right. I couldn't agree more. A lot of people get into this because we enjoy it and we love it, or we're maybe part of sports or things like that. And we kind of think that everyone's wired like us, but the majority of, there's a reason a large portion of our world is overweight and unhealthy. That's not what they necessarily enjoy. And so, but coaching is so powerful. Like I believe 100% in the power of coaching. And so the more coaches that we have, the better. There's more than enough people out there to help.
Completely. Yeah.
Are there any other books or resources that you feel like?
Those are the two big ones. Yeah. And I think like without going down the path of, like some of the like industry favorites around like growth mindset and like, like James Clear's work and stuff. I feel like that one is probably not recommended enough. That Cal Newport book, I really, really enjoyed.
If you were mentoring, and you do this a lot through your cert, a new coach that, they're just getting into the industry, or they're maybe looking at making a transition from another industry. They're just like, hey, I'm burnt out in finance and I want to find a way to help people. What's a good first step for that person to kind of start down the path?
I would shoulder tap my network and start to develop my skills like right away. I'd be like, I'm trying out this thing. I want to see, develop a system around coaching and work with some people. And I'm going to do it in a really limited capacity at first. We've always talked about this stuff. Do you feel like maybe we could go down the coaching path and see, and I could use you as a guinea pig kind of thing? That's the first.
Would you charge for it?
If I didn't feel comfortable charging for it, I wouldn't. I feel like everyone needs a little bit of skin in the game. So I would probably do it at some sort of subsidized rate, be it like, like even $50 to $100, super, super low ticket is better than no money, just because it'll be more serious. You'd take it more serious. They take it more serious, like that type of thing. But I think it'd be some element of that, like a fraction of what you ultimately want to charge.
Right. A strategy I found too that works well is if you're not comfortable taking money, you can say, hey, I'm going to charge you $100, but if you actually do the program and participate, I'll give the money back to you. So that way you don't have someone wasting your time. Right.
Exactly.
Because everyone,
incentivized
when you offer something for free. Right.
Totally. I would want to make it even stronger is that like, you got to do the program. And at the end of this, like at the 8-week mark, I'd be happy to give your money back, but you also have to answer these 3 testimonial questions for me or something.
Right. Yeah. I think it's awesome. As far as a learning capacity, a lot of people are like, hey, I want to get into nutrition or fitness or exercise science. Do I need to go the university route or the 2-year tech school or a certification? What do you feel is like an efficient process for someone to ultimately get in the field, have enough knowledge to get into the field and start working and feel like they can help people?
I think a lot of people that are going down the path, like the passion path, like in terms of competency and what they know, like they do have like some skills already. I would pair that with a certification in a lot of cases, just to, especially if I'm like, pretty green, figuring like, do I want to do this? That type of thing. That's the most like low risk barrier to entry thing to do. Like to me, someone's like, hey, maybe like dropping, $3,500 into a coaching, certification or something seems like really high risk. And it's like, no, like it's just because it's a bit unconventional, right? Versus like going back to school for 2 years. Like that is a much bigger risk when you're putting your life on hold for something that you're not entirely sure will work. You like any of those things. Right. So that's the way I would do it.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many good educators out there, yourself included, that have created things where you can really get a taste of, is this something that I maybe I'm passionate about it for me and I love going to the gym, but many times hobbies, then once you start doing it with other people, now it becomes work and a job and you need to be willing to grind a little bit and build something. Now it doesn't become quite as fun. And so figuring out, is this something I'm willing to grind on a little bit and make it into a business? Cool, man. All right. So I got some kind of quick questions, a little bit more fun, kind of lighthearted ones, just to spice things up.
Fun. I love the other ones, man. I'm like, I get it, but I'm like, man, that stuff lights me up. This is my life's work and I love talking about this stuff, but yeah, let's do the quick ones.
All right. Taco, burrito, or quesadilla?
taco.
Okay. I always have trouble with this in Canada. Do you guys do a lot of Mexican food in Canada or not really?
Yeah, no, there's quite a bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So whenever I have people on from like the UK, the Mexican food is just not popular in the UK. And so a lot of them are kind of like burrito, like, well, what's a burrito? But
no, totally. Like, I think, I don't know, like street tacos, like that's the money right there. Like that's what you need to be eating. Like corn-based tortillas that are like freshly made, like that stuff. Like, oh man.
I love it. All right. If you could eat at a restaurant, only one restaurant for the rest of your life, what restaurant do you pick?
Oh man.
Just got one. That's it.
If I had only one, going with the Mexican theme, when Chipotle was super popular, like I feel like that would, like if we're talking practicality of like me hitting my fitness goals while enjoying what I eat and it being convenient, like I might go down that path. It's
pretty versatile, right? Like you can mix things up, right? You can go a little higher carb, you can go a little lower carb, you can throw some guac on it.
Tastes good, like it tastes good enough. Like I'm not going down like the super gluttonous path. Like of course I'd want to pick something like, a little more frivolous, but like I think I hate that I had to think about it practically, but yeah, that's what I'd probably go with.
I love it. All right. Something you've purchased recently for $100 or less that you feel like has had disproportionate value, or has just had a profound impact on your life?
Oh man.
This is usually the hardest one for people. So if we need
I use for under $100.
Give or take.
I use Loom every single day.
Okay.
It saves so much time in my life. I use it all the time. It's made me a more effective communicator. I get more done. That would be like one of the, like, I don't know, just the screen shared technology where I can like send a link off right away. I'm not downloading things. Mm-hmm. It's up there. For sure. And we're getting a lot of use out of our air fryer. It's like,
I'm in the same boat. Like I was like, what is this air fryer thing? And then, my wife and I had to spend 3 months at my parents' house while, our house was being remodeled. And we just started using an air fryer and I'm like, man, this thing is legit.
Yeah. We were like, we were doing like a lot of like, just like carb-based stuff in it as well. But I started doing I did like chicken thighs like last week, like from raw, which I thought was just like how long is this going to take? Right. I thought it was going to take a lot longer, and it was like, they were really good.
Right. Yeah. I would have to agree with you on that. That's when we start talking about kitchen appliances, you're fully domesticated at that point, right?
Any chance I had of friends, like we just nail in coffin, right?
Right. I love it.
Yeah.
So, let's touch on Loom a little bit. Cause I remember when we had you on, one of our summits previously, like you did a Loom video back to me after we were kind of going back and forth in email. Is Loom something you use a lot for your check-ins?
Yeah. Every time. We do like kind of a combination of video voiceover, looking at relevant stuff, as well as email-based paper trail, so that like it's clear what the next action step is type thing. So a combination of both, but I feel like it just helps you bridge that gap around like a personal service. Like the people get to know you like that. It's like the best of both worlds.
Are you doing like screen capture and like showing things on your screen, or using it mainly for the video component?
Screen capture.
Okay. So what would be things you might be showing the client? Would you be looking at numbers, or?
I'd be looking over their like weekly feedback, as well as some objective numbers that they submitted, and talking about areas to improve, things that went well, talking about, like especially when like contrasting better days, worse days. Like it's so much easier to talk about when you're just like scrolling over something, right?
So you might be looking at like a food log or looking at their macros and like, hey, on Monday I saw this, and you're just kind of talking through the process. That's awesome.
Totally.
And then as far as, so it's email a lot for tools, it's Loom with tools, any other kind of tools outside of like macro trackers or things like that play an important role in your process?
I feel like Canva has allowed everyone to become a graphic designer to a point. pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
That's something I use also every day.
Mm-hmm. What do you have any form builders you like? I mean, do you use Google Forms, or how do you do your kind of actual check-ins?
Yeah, I like the Google form based stuff. I think I'm like, in terms of plugin based stuff too, like I've added things on it to like different notifications and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's a little bit like a souped up form kind of thing,
Right.
but yeah, I like to, I don't know. I just feel like it works well enough. Clients really know it really well in most cases, right? Like everyone's familiar with that stuff. So I do a lot of stuff on Google.
Nice. All right, here we go. Next one. All right. What cartoon world do you wish you could live in for 2 weeks?
For 2 weeks.
Cartoon world.
Oh man. You know, I think this is a terrible answer, but I always think about when I was in grade 3, Arthur, do you remember the cartoon Arthur?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, he was in grade 3. And, you know, I remember just relating a lot to it at the moment. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. It's not a fun world at all. It's
a very wholesome world. I mean, you know.
Daniel Tiger. Do you guys have Daniel Tiger in the States?
I do, but we didn't really get into it a lot. But
that's the most wholesome one. That one makes you just makes you feel good. But I don't know. I guess like adult-based cartoon stuff, I'm not super into. Yeah. I mean, I definitely grew up a Pokemon guy, so I guess like maybe that would be there.
Right. Yeah, I had another guest that did the Pokemon one. She was super into it. I mean, you have small children, so like my cartoon world right now is like Bluey. Like we're obsessed with Bluey.
Bluey's good.
Do you guys listen? Did you see or do you watch Bluey in Canada?
Yep. We definitely have like a lot of Bluey, and we got like Amy's sister lives in Australia, so we have Australian in-laws, and like he's got Bluey pajamas now and stuff like that kind of thing. Yeah, like there's a lot of like it's all kid stuff.
Right. It's kind of what happens when you have kids, right?
You know what interesting, like, and I think about from a business perspective all the time, like we've kind of went down the YouTube rabbit hole with Max a lot lately, and just like the shows of people playing with toys that have like these massive view counts and are like monetized. Like
it's crazy, right? It's bonkers. I think like the highest earning person on YouTube is like a 12-year-old or like a 14-year-old. It's something like, and it's just like unboxing things.
Yes. It's crazy. It's insane. And like the production quality does not need to be like, it doesn't like, obviously it's just like anything else, like start small and do something and kind of go from there. But like, I watch this every morning. I'm like, man, I might stop what I'm doing and I might go down this path because it's like, I think I could do it.
Yeah, like it's crazy. My son, who's now 5, he would be watching things in another language. Like it would be like they're talking in like Japanese, and they're just like running trucks into each other, and like
there's a few like German or Dutch ones like that too. That I don't know, like my suggested stuff or whatever is like all of that, and it's interesting.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it speaks to our world right now. Being you can make revenue any way you want to, right? All right, next one. If you were reincarnated as an animal based on your personality, what type of animal do you come back as?
Oh man, I'm a people pleaser. I'd be a dog for sure, like without a doubt. Like it's so boring, but I'm a domestic dog.
Are you a dog person? Like, do you guys have a dog?
I am. Yeah, we have 2 dogs, and one like we have a Patterdale Terrier, and she's like badass and amazing, and like literally like just like tears things up. So she's like useful, and then we have Oliver, who's younger. He is part Shih Tzu, part Golden Retriever, and he's just like the funny looking dog, and I get like so much like just pleasure out of just having him around. Golden Retriever.
That's awesome.
He's got a haircut, so he's usually looks like super long hair, but yeah, man,
that's awesome.
This is the dog that shouldn't exist that does.
Cool. I'd be calm too. I haven't heard him at all during the entire podcast.
Yeah, they're both here. I don't know. I'm upstairs, so I'm kind of tucked away. But usually, that doesn't happen either.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Last quick question. If you could go to dinner or have dinner with anyone past or present, is there anybody you'd like to have a conversation with?
Oh man, that's a really good question. You know who I'm super into, also Canadian, but like does a lot of, have you ever watched any like Nardwuar, the human serviette stuff?
No.
He's like this, he got really big in hip hop due to some of his interviews with like Pharrell Williams and Jay-Z and stuff. Okay. He's like the interviewer that like, he does these interviews where he knows a lot about the people's past and asks them questions and kind of like goes about it differently. I just think someone with like a very unique concept like that, I'd love to know a little bit more about how they came to it and stuff. But man, check out some of this, like also on YouTube, check out some of his interviews. They're so good.
What was the guy's name again?
Nardwuar, Nard.
Nardwuar. Okay.
WUAR.
Okay.
Check it out. He's been doing it forever. Like he's like, I think one of the last people that like talked to Kurt Cobain. They had an interview. And then it's just done interviews with like everyone from like punk, rock, but also like hip hop, and even just like all the Canadian prime ministers and stuff. It's like it's good stuff.
Cool. I'll have to check them out. Again, the beauty of the internet, just do a little YouTube search and you can find anything you need.
Exactly.
So if people want to learn a little bit more about what you're doing, the certification, what are some good spots that they can find out some more info?
Yeah, I'm probably most active on Instagram. So MARCW Morris. I'm quite active there, but again, I've been like doing more YouTube stuff recently there. And I encourage anyone to check out some of my long form content, especially if you're aspiring or current nutrition coach that way. And then all the program related stuff, you can go to drmarkmethod.com.
Okay. drmarkmethod.com. We'll make sure all that stuff is in the show notes. So cool, man. Anything else that maybe I missed that you wanted to cover?
No, I love what you guys are doing. Thanks so much for having me on. I really, really appreciate it. And I love being part of the movement of, people helping other people in a coaching capacity. So I appreciate the time.
Awesome, Marc. Appreciate you coming on, brother.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you later.
See ya.
Thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Coach Catalyst podcast. If you are a coach looking to do more for your clients than just workouts, give Coach Catalyst a test drive. Try it for 14 days. Jump on call with your personal strategy coach, Ashley, and see how easy technology can be, all for free. Tell them Trevor sent you. Until next time, keep changing lives.